Hello and welcome to the Fabulous at 50 podcast, celebrating a vibrant global community of women over 50 through entertaining interviews that will inspire, educate, and empower. Your host, Joanne Neweduk, was born to nurture and promote vibrance. Joanne is both the Community Director for Calgary, Canada, and oversees the global operations for Fabulous at 50. As an oncology nurse, integrative practitioner in multiple modalities, life skills mentor, and manager, Joanne moves people from challenging situations to positive outcomes through the use of her innate gifts and learned skills. Here's your host, Joanne Neweduk.
Everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Fabulous at 50. I am so happy to be bringing the next guest here for you to tap into the wisdom that this woman has. She is quite incredible. I met her a number of years ago when she was the director for eWomen Network for the city that I'm in. That's Calgary, Alberta. And of course, those of you that are familiar with eWomen Network, it has chapters all over North America. And I was just so taken by this woman's professionalism and her warmth and caring for the tribe that she had created, that I was beyond excited when I found out she was also the woman who was helping to organize many other events and trainings and business trainings that were happening throughout the city over the next number of years. Now, the reason I have her on today's show is not necessarily because of that role. That is the role she had, but she has transitioned her role. And I really want to touch base with two themes for this conversation. One is about how we can pivot our lives, how we, when we get into our midlife and into the fabulous 50s, especially, we can take a look at ourselves and decide that maybe there's a bunch of skills that we have not been expressing, and how can we recreate or learn a new way to express those? And the second theme that I want to talk about is I want to tap into this woman's wisdom and knowledge on event planning, because over this last year of the world turning upside down, so many businesses have had to go from live events to online events, just like Fabulous at 50 has. And I promise you that Yvonne has the answers if you're wanting to know either the behind the scenes, what's going on, or you yourself perhaps run an organization or a business that needs that help. So welcome, Yvonne. I'm so happy that you're on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Joanne. It's such a pleasure to be here, and you almost make me blush with all your, raving accolades.
Well,
there.
And we're going to go further. Fantastic. Now, I just want to do our formal introduction here before we get going. Yvonne Basten developed her ability and positive attitude through her experiences of emigrating to Canada from the Netherlands, and 11 years of traveling the globe with her young family. She runs her event management company, and that would be Management.Guru. Yes, there's a .guru, not .com, .guru, which is awesome. That's exactly what you are. Supporting heart-centered coaches during their online events with the logistics and sales. So, wow, where do we start with this? I definitely want to get into your event management, but do you mind sharing just a little bit about what that was like to emigrate to a new country? That's a big step. And you're traveling around the world for 11 years. Where did that fall? Before, after, or in the middle of emigrating?
That was before we officially immigrated to Canada. So I've been in Canada since August of 2000. And became Canadian citizen in 2009 in April. Actually, this week,
congratulations!
I'm having my anniversary for that.
Wonderful.
And, so before that, when I first met my then husband, he was actually working on rotation out of Angola in a camp situation. And once we decided to get married and we knew we wanted to have children right away, he actually asked for a transfer. So we started out in Paris, where my oldest son, Freddie, was born. And so that was, it was a fabulous time. I loved Paris. I loved, just walking around and sauntering through the streets and, do shopping and everything and just enjoy Paris as Paris
It's
is. And
beautiful.
it's amazing. Yes.
Yeah.
And yeah, from there, we actually moved for 4 years to Nigeria. We knew that going in when we moved to Paris.
Oh,
And
really?
so we actually kind of, used that time as well to stay connected as much as we could with our family back home in the Netherlands, because we knew that, once we moved to Nigeria, we couldn't just pop over for Mother's Day or Father's Day or anything like that. Then we were for 4 years in Nigeria. I got pregnant there with my youngest one at one point. I just moved back, for the last kind of couple of months of my pregnancy and the first few weeks once I delivered him. And then, once he was 5 weeks old, we moved back. And and then we had a stint back in the Netherlands for a little bit, and we moved from there to Norway. I was in Norway. I was supposed to be in Norway for a couple of years, but after about 3.5 months, he came home and he said, "You're not gonna like what I have to say," which was basically code for "we're moving." And so instead, we moved back to the Netherlands for another year before we moved to Singapore for 2 years. And Singapore was actually Singapore was our last stop before immigrating to Canada. So we knew that Singapore was also his last posting potentially with the company. So he was a little bit older than I was. And so we knew that Singapore was potentially his last posting. And so we started to really seriously consider, where we would move once we were done with the Singapore project. And, after some different detours that don't really matter to this conversation, we decided to immigrate to Canada. And so we started the process. I found somebody online. This was when internet was actually still fairly new. Google was definitely not a verb yet.
Yes.
And so I started the process, and like a little over 2 years later, our landed immigrant status came through, and never looked back. I've been here ever since. So yeah.
And I know, so I didn't know that whole story of like how many places you had gone. I knew that you love to travel because I've watched your Facebook posts over the last few years, and I'm like, where is she now? And I loved following it. I actually like it when people share their travel because I'm following what's going on. Yeah. And it's interesting because I know when Ron and I traveled a couple of years ago, we were really good at posting over those couple of weeks, but then I missed a few days, and I actually had people message me and go, "Where are you guys now? We missed your post." And I'm like, "Oh, I didn't even know it was like my posts were, I guess, almost like a little travel log." She goes, "Yeah, I'm living vicariously through you." So that is amazing. And so you really learned a lot of skills with that, especially when you say young, like really young children at the time. And I know they're young men now, right?
Yeah. My oldest one will be 32 this year. My youngest one will be 30. So
yeah, it's true. They're even past the young man. You say young man, you think of a 20-year-old. That's exciting. Now let's step into, I really am curious a bit more about what's gone on in this last year for you. Because I know you as event planner extraordinaire, and I so appreciate that because I have done obviously a lot of my job and role over the years has been event planning. I was a nurse initially, but if I got on a board of directors or worked with a charity, I was like, oh, I know how to run an event and raise you some money. But you have truly made this into your business now. Can you share a little bit about that story?
Yeah, it's actually an interesting story, Joanne, because it was not something that, it's funny how sometimes things work out, because it wasn't really something that was on my radar as, that is kind of my life's work. This is what I'm meant to be doing on this planet. I have a, different background, of course, like many. I traveled the world, and everywhere where I traveled, I wasn't really able to have an actual job because the work permit was usually just for my husband. And so, but when we, for instance, lived in Singapore, soon after we arrived there, there was one of the moms who literally walked up to me and said, "So we have a Dutch club here, and we have a committee that organizes events for both children and adults. However, just before the summer, we decided that we wanted to split that group and create two separate committees, one that does just adult events and one that just does children events. Would you be interested in chairing the kids committee?" And I looked at her and I'm like, you don't know me from Adam, right? Like, where does this come from?
I know what it was. You were new blood.
Yes, I was.
I know what it's like getting on a committee. You were new blood. Let's go after her right now and make her feel welcome and appreciated.
Yeah, I'm sure that was a good chunk of it. And so, but I did feel almost like, there was something written on my forehead that I wasn't aware of. And so, I did events there for a couple of years. And even if I look back at, my youth growing up, I was born and raised Catholic. I did a lot of things for the church. I started like a kids, like a childcare kind of thing so if parents wanted to come to church and they wanted to for a while, when the priest would do his lecture, which was, like 20 minutes, and it's, for kids, super boring at times. So, they would actually pause church for a couple of minutes so parents could drop their kids off at the childcare, which was me. And I would entertain those kids for a while. And, so I did all kinds of things. I was always busy, I was always helping, always wanting to try and help, right? I was always coming from service. For that reason, when I was 4 or 5 years old, when I was in kindergarten, my teacher actually put me in a corner outside the classroom because I was, helping one of my buddies while she was still explaining probably, but my buddy didn't get it. So I was helping.
You were probably explaining it in a way that he understood. And I know you to be that, because when I've been at events, and, these are seminars and like educational or business, they're development events, like business development. You have always been so good at, if someone's not getting it, like being able to pull them aside and explaining it in the language that they understand. Right.
Yeah.
So
I guess that's one of my things. So
yes.
Yeah. So I know that I have a background that is, always coming from service and always trying to help and organize and things like that. But it wasn't really obvious to me that that would be in the event world, even though I've done, a whole bunch of event stuff over the years, when I look back. So for years, I was actually working with one of my closest friends, Lanny, for her company. But then at one point, I started to realize and really understand, I was working with a coach at the time as well, that there was something else out there for me. And it was something for women, and something, again, coming from service, doing something to help them, support them. And I wasn't too sure what that was. Initially, I thought that I was more in the coaching, kind of realm. I also ran a mastermind at one point, and, I did all these different things, and it still wasn't quite it. But I was doing, I've been a managing director for eWomen Network. I did that work for almost 9 years. Yeah. And so I had a lot of experience with, guiding and supporting women and help promote them and all those kind of things. And of course, organizing events was part of that as well. But then once I started to realize that, events was something that I could potentially do, as a company, things really changed for me, because I was already doing work for a company out of Vancouver that had come to Calgary, that were doing training for entrepreneurs, business training. And so I started helping them. That was way back when in 2014 that I started with that, initially as a volunteer and then as a paid position. But I had kind of put that aside as something that I did, I just did that for them. I didn't necessarily do that,
Isn't that fascinating?
On a bigger scale.
Yeah, it's fascinating how sometimes it's like, oh, well, that's what I just do. Yeah. I would just do it as a volunteer anyways. Like that is where the magic is. Yeah. And I think there's so many women out there that are not even recognizing that is your magic. That is your skill. That is something that, you don't always have to monetize it, but when you can, like for you, you wanted to have a business. So I know that this year wasn't the easiest year for you. Can you share a little about what went on? Because I think there's women listening here that might be in the same boat or have felt what you have felt over this year.
Well, for sure, because in the fall of 2019, I had really chosen the path of, becoming an event manager and doing it as my, my own company, even though I had done it for years prior. And, I was really putting the stake in the sand. And then, of course, March hit with COVID. And, it really felt like a rug was pulled from underneath me because I was doing in-person live events.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, I had already hired you to do
Yeah.
the Fabulous at 50 Calgary trade show in spring of 2020. We had already had our preliminary meetings, and
Yeah.
I get it. Like Fab at 50 was built completely on in-person events. Wow.
Yeah.
And
And so
so of course for you then, so what did you go through? What happened then?
I went through a pity party.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I felt I was sad, I was mad, I was basically going through what I, in hindsight, would call probably a grieving process.
Yeah.
Because I really felt, like what the heck is going on, right? Like this is insane. I finally figured out what I wanted to do. I had found my lane, I'm in my lane, and now this, like, what am I supposed to do with this and make of this? And so I did have my pity party, and then I was on one day in April last year, I was talking to one of my best friends, who's also one of my mentors and coaches, and via Zoom, and she asked the question, "So, Yvonne, how are things going?" And I just, I exploded. I was just ranting. I was, basically telling her that I was done. I was going to throw the towel in the ring. Everybody could figure out their own events. I just had, I was like, I can't do this. This is just way beyond that I can handle right now. And so she, just let me rant. And, the funny part in hindsight was because she was just sitting there, stone-faced, Johnny, not, she didn't move a muscle on her face. She was just looking at me, just let me say my thing. But because of that, because I didn't get any, feedback or anything, it actually escalated my angerness and my beingness in the moment. So I was just letting it rip. And, once I was done, and, I fell silent, and she just looked at me and she said, "Well, Yvonne, that's rather selfish. There's people out there who need you."
Wow.
Right? That was my come to Jesus moment with her.
That was. Mm-hmm. But it sounded like also, though, you got to have that moment of cathartic. You got to let it out and then go, now that it's all out in front of me, what's really going on? Yeah. What can I really do with it? And we do need those moments. And, God bless her for like being able to hold that space for you while you release that tension.
For sure. And it was a pivotal moment for me because everything, since that moment had changed. Like I started to kind of go like, okay, so what can I do? Where do I start? Who do I contact? I started to have conversations. I started educating myself. I was using Zoom for years, but I never really got, beyond the, just one-on-one or just a small group conversation type thing. I never really had used breakout rooms, all those kind of things. Right. So I started educating myself in the Zoom world. What am I supposed to be doing here? What does that look like? What information do I need to gather in order to, change what I normally was used to doing in person into something that can be done online. And then I started, it was a steep learning curve, because there are, quite a few things that you have to do and approach differently when it comes, when you go from an in-person event and do that same event online. But once I figured that out with, support of my coaches and some other people around me who were always willing to help me, I was like, okay, this I can do. So once I started, doing events and because the best way to learn as well is, I can
hop right
research, till the cows come home. But it's of course best if I'm just in a scenario where I can see how everything plays out and how does it all work and fit together and what works well and what doesn't work. And so, since then I've done a whole bunch of, online events that have worked, like really, really well, and people are loving it. And
so these would be like either like a conference or an educational presentation, that type of thing, just so people listening to understand. Are they ones that are a couple hours long or several days long?
Multiple days. So I work with a lot of heart-centered coaches who do a multiple day, what we call in the industry, an enrollment event. So they have a either a coaching program, a 6-month or a year-long coaching program, or a mastermind that they sell during those 3 days together. So they give like high-end information, lots of teaching going on during the days. So it's usually 2 or 3 days. And then at one point they'll make their offer. So I help them, with high level logistical pieces during the event. I usually work together with a team, with their team. And I can bring in my own team as well if I needed to, but, I usually work with their team. And then I help with the sales end of things as well during that whole process.
Because there's a lot that goes involved because, I have to say I've been on some of these events, and they, depending on the person presenting, they can be very worthwhile because, and I imagine the ones you would align with is, I've been at ones where the whole thing felt like a sales pitch, and I'm like, well, this was a waste of my time. The really good ones, and I know the people you align yourself with are the ones where they literally teach some of their best stuff, like, and it's a very reasonable price that you're usually paying to attend.
Right.
And then it really is so that you get a taste of, do I want to invest in 6 months? And if you don't, if it's like, well, I learned what I learned for the money I paid and off I go. But quite often it's like, instead of, here, I want to sign someone up I want to get a coach for 6 months. It's a little daunting to go, I've never seen them in action. So I think these are brilliant. And the logistics though, like I have been on one where it's the biggest one I've ever been on. There's like 900 people on this call. And then I know they can range from probably like 20 to, as I said, 1,000 people. I'm sure the really big guys are doing.
Oh, like Tony Robbins has like thousands and thousands.
Because instead of, you're not limited. And here's a bonus that I see. Tell me if you agree, is very often when these were live events, it's like either you got the people, if you're the one putting it on, you have the people in your own city close by driving, or people have to fly in. And yes, people, when you get more known, you get thousands of people coming into these events, but it's still limited by what you anticipate you're going to get, the size of the venue you've got. It's usually in the hundreds that most of them I went to. But now if you get the word out, is like, this is giving opportunity, especially to entrepreneurs that would be like, well, I don't have the available cash on hand to fly somewhere, but I can get the expertise. And how amazing for you to be in that, not in the background, but an integral part of making these happen.
Yeah, you're totally right, Joanne. Like the opportunities are so much greater, when you do an online event. And online events, whether people love them or hate them, they won't go away. It's just, that's just a fact of life. I follow a company called Sage Events. They do the Tony Robbinses of the world, and even Sandra Yancey from eWomen Upwork has hired Sage. And so they are a big event management company in the US, and they know their stuff. They've been around for quite some time, and they really forecasted that some people will try and attempt, doing some hybrid events where you have a live audience and an online audience simultaneously. And they say people will come back from that. They might try it a few times, but they firmly believe, and I believe, I'm actually from the same belief, that it's too much to hold the
one
attention
or the other,
and give the same amount of attention to both audiences, because they're so different, right?
They are different. Yeah, I have been, for sure. I've seen where they're like, oh, well, we'll just kind of live stream. It's not the same.
It's not.
So two things happen, I find, is if you're the live audience, it's a little frustrating having them wait to do all the technicality for the online, and the online the same. It's like, do one or the other. So I can see companies in the future offering both, going, here's my online event, here's my in-person event. And there's pros and cons for both, like,
of course,
it's great that you don't have to fly to somewhere, but at the same time, the con is that you didn't get to go and fly and meet the people in person. And so we all look forward to that. But based on like all of the learning that you've had over the decades, really, like, incredible, like, has it brought you to, like, is there a belief in you that drives this? Like, what do you believe in? What helps keep you going?
Well, I believe that everyone, so this might not be what you think I was going to say. So I believe that everybody has the right to earn great money. And
awesome.
So
that is, fantastic.
And that's, like when you host an event and when you do an enrollment event, your ultimate goal is, yes, it's to serve the people that are in front of you, at a high level by giving, some of your best stuff to them to implement, take home and implement. And you're there to sell your program. And there's nothing wrong with that. And, I think that's my biggest belief, is that most women undercharge and undervalue themselves. And, so I'm here as well. What I do, what I, for instance, taught in my masterclass yesterday was I was actually talking a fair amount about money and about, making sure that you ask, for what you're worth, and not too shy away. If you, if you have doubts that people will never pay, $5,000 for my program or $10,000 for my program, then you need to, really help yourself by working on your money story.
Yeah.
And
I love that. Like what I hear is
believe
you believe it. People deserve to earn. And this could get into a whole different conversation on money is just a representation of energy. It's like you did something for me. This is now representing the exchange. And then I'm going to do it. And I was listening to someone yesterday, and they were talking about, that flow. And when we really get into that, the money flows in and the money flows out, and it's that exchange of energy, that we do better.
Yeah, one of the women that is hugely inspiring by me is Sandra Yancey of eWomen Network, and she's the owner and founder. And her mission is to have 1 million women earn $1 million, because there's still a very, very small percentage of the world female population
still, what was
that
the
makes
stat?
$1 million.
Women still are earning like 79 cents to the dollar for men.
Yeah. Yes.
And so, and more women, it's like, what is it? 5 times? Don't quote me on that one, but more women start businesses, but then they also fail. Now there's a whole reason on why. It's not necessarily that they're not as good business people, but there's a lot of other social economic pressures. So I want to, at this point, thank you for the support you give, because you are supporting really heart-centered coaches that then go out and support women in all sorts of ways, whether it's telling their story, writing a book, coaching on. And you and I have already talked, and that, I know that because we've just recreated what Fab at 50 is, and we've done an online community that we have priced very affordable, not $10,000 but that is at the come in and be part of our community. This is the really, it's like $20 a month to be part of the Fab at 50 community and get a weekly call. And then from there, we will be building out some other programs to serve and support, mostly in the health realm and the menopause madness. And I know that I would love to. Yeah, it is. Everyone loves that. It's true. Menopause is completely madness at times. And we want to support, because that is one of the biggest transitions. But there's others. There's, I have ideas for, something like starting over or something along those lines. I'm finding out there's a lot of women in our community that are either recently divorced or they've been divorced for a long time, and they've been in a stagnation and they want to step out, and, or widowed and so forth. And so, or even for yourself, it was like, okay, well, my career sort of ended what I thought it was going to be. I'm starting over. That's a big transition. And, we see a role. So I would love to pre-book you at some point in time to work one of our big events.
I can't wait.
I know. Or even, coming up with ways of doing our Fab at 50, we'd have the martini party, where we have speakers and we have, booths and marketplace, instead of just having it per city. I think that we should be doing one of these online, and I think it would be lots of fun. So we have lots of creation now that we've got things flowing and we have our new website up. I mean, we have to have the basis, the foundation there. But before we leave, because I can't believe our time is almost up. I know you and I could just keep on talking forever. And, but can you share it sounded like a tip just a moment ago, but like 3 tips that you want to share, whether they're your life wisdom or practical tips. What do you think women listening could walk away with today, knowing from you?
If you are, hosting an event, an online event, ask for help.
Yes.
Don't do it all by yourself. And this is not, like, oh, come and work with me. In the end, like whatever you do, I just want to, reiterate, just don't do it all by yourself.
Yeah.
I've heard so many times from people that, they were on a call and then the host is trying to do everything from dropping links in a chat box and everything. So like I said earlier, I taught my masterclass yesterday and I had an event assistant there who was, welcoming everybody and letting everybody in and, putting links in the Dropbox and watching for the questions and all those kind of things. And so that is, I think that is a key thing for people that they oftentimes forget. I almost forgot.
It's important.
I was in the middle of organizing everything.
There. That's your tip on if you're running an event, get help.
Yes.
But I'm just going to say on the philosophical side of things, that's across the board for anything. If you're taking on something big, it's not a bad thing to ask for support, to get someone so that you are more successful. It doesn't mean you're not capable. It means you can shine in your genius. And then you also give a beautiful platform for somebody else to shine in theirs. All right. Number 2.
Something that bubbles up in me is love is all you need.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like love is everywhere. I'm big on love. I love people. I love love.
I was going to say, I love love. I love that
I
term.
know. I've got actually one of my pictures on my website is, my heart picture.
I have one on our website as well.
Yeah.
I need to go find your.
And I think last but not least, follow your dreams.
Mm-hmm.
There's something in you. I had to search for several years to figure out what Yvonne wanted to do when she grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's finding your lane can sometimes, be a little bit of work. And sometimes you think you're there and then, something happens or things, they don't go as planned and you kind of go like, yeah, this is not it. Keep looking. There's something out there that is, that will give you a fulfilling, happy, jazzed life. Like I'm so passionate about what I do. I love working with my people and just, making them look good and make them shine. And, it's what I live for. And so, if you feel like you're not quite in your lane yet, just don't give up, keep looking. It's out there.
I love that. And that truly is so in alignment with what we're putting out there for Fab at 50 as well. Is like, Diana Bose, who was our founding, our founder, her favorite saying was, if not now, when, like go after it. And I love what you said, that it's also, and look for different ways that it can be expressed. Maybe we can end on that dream is, if there's anything I know I learned is that when I was learning to dream again, that gets into a whole nother story, for actually that's coming out, actually came, it would have just come out actually, where I read a chapter that I wrote, and it does talk about at one point in time that I believe I forgot how to dream. And so I love yours is that follow the dream, or dare to have some dreams, dare to tap into yourself and go, what is within me that has not yet been expressed and is ready to come out now. And I'm so glad that all of your bubbly love and you know what? Your bubbly, genuine love. I was just going to say that it really is a genuine one. It's not an over the top. Sometimes you meet people and it's like, okay, they're coming across lovely, but it doesn't feel right. What I know is yours is a genuine, the way I find that you express your love and caring is that you hold space and you are confident. You see in others what they don't even see in themselves yet, which is beautiful. And I appreciate you. And I so appreciate you being on today. So thank you. And I look forward to having you on In the future. Okay. For those just listening, because this goes out on, podcast land for the audio, but also we are part of the eWomen Network podcast network. Sorry, let me say that again. eWomen Podcast Network as well. And so we're doing the little where you take your hands and make a heart. Look, we're making purple ones. We're both in purple today. All righty. Well, everyone, thank you so much for listening. And to learn more about Yvonne Basten, go to Management.Guru. And when you get there, you can check out all the different stuff. And she probably has an email or some way of contacting her if you want to learn more. And if you get a chance to listen to her masterclass or attend live any of her events, I highly recommend it. And all of this information will be in the show notes, whether you are listening to us or getting to watch the behind the scenes on our YouTube channel. And if you're on the YouTube channel, don't forget to subscribe. Remember, hit that little subscribe button. And also, actually, even if you're just listening on whatever podcast platform you enjoy. So take care, Yvonne, and take care, everyone else, and go out. Actually, do you want to end with how you used to end all of our network meetings?
I sure can. Dream big, work hard, and love lots.
Yes. Thanks for joining us today. You've been listening to the Fabulous at 50 podcast with your host, Joanne Neweduk. Join us again for more inspirational interviews on topics that matter to you. If you like what you've heard on today's episode, check out the liner notes, or to learn more about this vibrant community that celebrates women over 50, please visit fabulousat50.com. That's www.fabulousat50.com.